In this section, we're going to explore Windows 7 and find out more about it. When you first start your computer, if you only have one user account configured and it doesn't have a password on it, you'll be taken straight to the Windows desktop. But if you do have a password on your account, or you have more than one user account set up on a computer, you'll see a logon screen. Here is an example. Here we have 2 users. If we click on this user, we can see that a password is required in order to be able to log in. If we know the password, type it in the box and press enter, or click the blue arrow button next to it. If we don't, we can press the switch user button and go and select the other user. Now before we do, let me show you a couple of other things that we have on the logon screen. In the bottom left, we have the ease of access features. These can help people with disabilities or with problems reading text on the screen. On the right hand side, we have the shutdown and restart options. Now, as I said, if you have a user account that doesn't have a password, clicking on it will take you straight to the Windows desktop. In the next segment, we'll explore the desktop and find out more about it. In this segment, we're going to look at the Windows 7 desktop. This is the area on your screen into which you open programs, files and documents. You might have a wallpaper in the background, a photograph or a picture. Here we have the Windows 7 step-by-step wallpaper. You might have the standard Windows 7 light pale blue wallpaper, or depending on where you bought your computer, you might have a different one. You may also have icons on your desktop. Here we have 5. We've got the recycle bin, which is where files and documents go when you delete them so that you can recover them if needs be. We have 2 programs and 2 files. If you mouse over any file or icon on the desktop with your mouse, a tooltip will appear giving you more information about it. You will also see that 2 of these icons have a small arrow in the bottom left corner. This tells us that the icon itself is a shortcut to the original program or the original document, and not that program or document itself. Let me give you an example. This icon here and this icon don't have a shortcut arrow on them. This means that if we delete the icon from the desktop, we delete the actual file or the actual program. The Adobe Reader 9 icon and this wildlife video do have the shortcut icon arrow on them, so we know that if we delete the icon, we don't delete the original file. The original file is actually stored elsewhere. Now on your mouse you've got 2 buttons. The left mouse button, if you click it once, is used to select something. If you double click it or click it twice, it will open something. But you can also use the right mouse button. If you right click on an icon on the desktop, you will open a context menu which can give you all sorts of additional options. Here we can open the program, we can copy it, we can rename it. There's many things we can do. If we right click on this video file, we see we have options here to play it, to copy it, to send it to various locations, and so on. You can also right click with your mouse in any blank space on the desktop to bring up a context menu of things that you can do to customize the desktop itself. Here we can change the icons, change how things are arranged and sorted on the desktop, change the screen resolution, or personalize the desktop. Well, that's the Windows desktop. In the next segment, we'll look at the Start menu. In this segment, we're going to look at the Windows 7 Start menu. This is the place from which you will most commonly launch Windows features and your installed programs. You access it either by clicking on the blue Start orb in the bottom left corner of your screen at the left side of the taskbar, or by pressing the Start key in the bottom left hand corner of your computer's keyboard. Now, the Start menu itself is split into several different areas, and we'll look at each one in turn. The main area here on the left hand side shows you your most commonly used programs. The programs that appear in this list will change depending on how often you use programs and what programs you use. You'll see that some of them may have an arrow on their right hand side, and if you hover over this with your mouse or click on it, a list of additional options will appear. This may be sub options for this program, or it could be a list of recently accessed files with that program. Now, as I said, you have here a list of the most commonly used programs, but you can pin programs to the start menu so that they will always appear regardless of how many times you use them. Let's say we want to pin the calculator to the start menu because we always want to be able to access it. If we mouse over calculator and right click with our mouse to bring up a context menu, we can select pin to start menu. Calculator will now appear at the top of the start menu all of the time, regardless of how many times we use it. We can also unpin it by right clicking on it again and selecting unpin from start menu. Now, beneath these programs you'll see an all programs link. So if you mouse over this or click on it, a list of all of the programs that are installed on your computer will appear, if necessary with a scroll bar so that you can navigate your way up and down the list. Here we have some installed programs, and here we have folders containing additional programs. If we open maintenance, for instance, we'll see additional options, and here we see the scroll bar to help us navigate our way around. We can pin any program here to the start menu in exactly the same way by right clicking on it and selecting pin to start menu from the context menu that appears. At the bottom of the start menu on the left hand side is a search box. Now, by default the focus is taken to this search box when you press the start button, and here you can type anything to search for any program that you want, but it's really rather clever. Let's say we want to search for DVDs. Now, almost immediately you can see a list of programs and Windows features has appeared associated with DVDs. Here we've got Windows DVD Maker in programs, but you'll also see items appearing that don't have DVD in the title but that are associated in some way with DVDs. If we want to search for picture, we can see all sorts of options here associated with pictures, as well as things named specifically with pictures in the title. On the right hand side of the start menu we have at the top our user logon picture and our username to take us through to our personal folder, which will contain our documents, our internet favourites and so on. Beneath this are 3 specific links for documents, pictures and music, and these will take us through to our user folders containing those specific items. Then there's a link to the games panel. In here all the games that you have installed in Windows will appear. Below that is a link called Computer. Now, whereas the links above, Documents, Pictures and Music, will take you through to specific folders for Documents, Pictures and Music, the Computer link will open up a window in which you'll be able to see the hard drives installed in your computer, any USB pen drives or USB attached hard drives that you have, and you'll be able to work with files and folders there. Beneath this are 4 options for configuring and helping with Windows. The control panel is the main area from which you control Windows features, and we'll talk about this in a different segment. Devices and printers is similar to the control panel but allows you to manage devices and printers that are plugged into your computer. Again, we'll talk about that in another segment. Default programs allows you to set the program that a certain type of file will open with or will run with. And then there are help and support options available straight from the start menu if you get stuck. Beneath that is a shutdown button for shutting down the computer, which again has an arrow off to its right, which if you hover over it with your mouse or click on it will bring up other options, and we'll look at these in a further segment as well. In the next segment, we're going to look at the Windows 7 taskbar. In the last segment, we looked at the Start menu, which, as I said, is the place you're most likely to go to run programs that you have installed in Windows. But you can also do it from the Windows 7 taskbar. The taskbar runs along the bottom of your screen. You can see it here. On the far left is the Windows Start orb, which you click to open the Start menu. Then we have some program icons, and on the far right we have some more icons, the clock and the date. Now you remember I said that you can pin a program to the Start menu by right-clicking on its icon and selecting Pin to Start menu from the context menu that appears. Just above that is a Pin to Taskbar option, and if you select that, the program's icon will then be pinned to the taskbar, and you can run it directly from the taskbar with a single click. We want to run an instance of Windows Explorer, so we'll click on its icon on the taskbar. Now you can see when a program is running on the taskbar because a window will appear around its taskbar icon. Let's say we want to run a second instance of Windows Explorer here, perhaps because we want to copy files between our computer and an external USB hard disk. If we click on the program's icon on the taskbar, it disappears. Click on it again, it reappears, and so on. There are two ways to run a second instance of a program. One of which is to click once on the scroll wheel in the centre of your mouse. Another of which is to bring up a jump list. Now jump lists are new in Windows 7 and there's two ways to access them. Either right click on an icon on the taskbar with your mouse, or left click with your mouse and push upwards. Jump lists will always give you an option to run a second instance of a program and unpin that program from the taskbar. But they may give you other options, such as frequently accessed locations. Here, we want to run a second instance of Windows Explorer, so we'll click Windows Explorer in the jump list. If we bring up the jump list for Internet Explorer, we can see frequently accessed websites, a private browsing mode, and for Windows Media Player, recently opened files, and options to play our music. Now we want to be able to use the taskbar to organise the windows that we have, and we can do this quite easily. If you mouse over an icon for a running program on the taskbar, a thumbnail image of that program will appear. But you can do more with it than just look at the thumbnail of the image. If you mouse over the thumbnail, all of the other windows that you have open will disappear, and that program that you want to see will be brought to the foreground. Again, we can see here we've got two instances of Windows Explorer running, and you can see that there are two ever so slightly adjacent windows around the Windows Explorer icon there. And if we mouse over these separate thumbnails, we can switch between these two windows. Let's select that one. Now, on the right hand side of the taskbar there are several icons. Here we have a small arrow. This is the system tray where icons for other running programs can be found, and you can click on icons in the system tray to bring those programs to the foreground. Then we have the Action Center. This is very important. We'll talk about it in another segment. Click on the flag and any important messages that Windows has to tell you will appear here. Then we have the network icon. Here, this is telling us that we're connected to the internet via a Wi-Fi wireless connection, and it'll bring up a list of available Wi-Fi networks that we can connect to, and an option to open the network center in Windows. Then we have the volume control, and we can change the main volume control here or mute the speakers completely. Next to this we have the clock, and if we click on this we can bring up a larger clock and a calendar, and you can use this calendar in several ways, and it's very, very useful indeed. Now finally, at the right side of the Windows 7 taskbar we have the Show Desktop button. If we just mouse over this, then all of the windows that we have on the screen will disappear and we'll be able to see the desktop. If we click this button, all of the windows that we have open will be minimized, and if we click it again, they'll all be restored. Why do we want to be able to see the desktop? Well, because we can put gadgets on the desktop, and we'll talk about gadgets in the next segment. In the last segment, I talked about the Show Desktop button on the far right of the Windows 7 taskbar that you can use to transparentize or hide all of the windows that you have open on your screen so that you can see the desktop. But why might you want to do this? Well, you might want to see what icons you've got there, or you might want to see the gadgets you've got. So what are gadgets and how do you get to them? Now, you remember I said previously that you can right-click anywhere in a blank space on the desktop to bring up a context menu. Here, we can see that we've got a gadgets option, so let's click on that. Now, there are lots of gadgets that come with Windows 7 as standard, but there's more that you can get online, and I'll show you how in a minute. The gadgets here, calendar, clock, and so on, you put on your desktop simply by dragging them and dropping them onto the desktop. Let's move the calendar, the clock, and a picture puzzle. Now, if you move your mouse over one of these gadgets, you'll see a variety of options. There'll be an option to close it, there'll be a little drag panel here so that you can move it around, and you may see other options including being able to make it a larger size or a smaller size. Here on the clock we can see a little spanner, so if we click on that we can change the style of the clock, we can show a second hand, we can give the clock a name if we want to have several clocks on our desktop, perhaps for different time zones. The picture puzzle here we can have a little play with, and you can put these gadgets anywhere you want on your desktop. You can have whatever gadgets you want on your desktop. Now remember I said you can get more online. You'll see in the bottom of this panel there is a Get More Gadgets Online link. If you click on that, you'll be taken straight to a Microsoft website where you can download more gadgets for your computer. Now these gadgets can do pretty much everything from search to telling you about your emails to giving you lots of information, and they're really very useful. And as I said, we can see there's a window here open full screen. If we mouse over the Show Desktop icon on the far right of the Windows 7 taskbar, those windows disappear and we can see the gadgets that we have on the screen. Now we've been looking in these first segments at the desktop and how you interact with Windows, so now we're going to have a look at how you can configure Windows in the next few segments. In the previous segments we've been looking at the Windows 7 desktop, start menu and taskbar and ways that we can interact with the operating system. But now we want to try and configure the operating system to best suit ourselves. We do this through the control panel. You access the control panel through the start menu and by clicking on the control panel button. Now the control panel by default is arranged into categories to make it easy for you to find what it is you're looking for. The categories we have are System and Security, Network and Internet, Hardware and Sound, Programs, User Accounts and Family Safety, Appearance and Personalization, Clock, Language and Region, and Ease of Access. And the Ease of Access features can help people with disabilities or people who have trouble reading text on the screen. Now, the green text are the main category links, and we'll look at these more in a moment. The blue links are specific control panel items, and by default you'll see the ones that you're going to want to use the most commonly. Let's say we want to look at the System and Security panel, so click on System and Security in the control panel. Now we've got two panes here. We've got the left hand pale blue pane. In this one we'll see all of the options that we saw on the last screen, so we can easily switch between different control panel items. On the right side we have all the system and security options. Action Center, Windows Firewall, System, Windows Update, Power Options, and so on, with helpful descriptions of what each control panel item does. Here, if we click on Hardware and Sound, we have all the different hardware and sound control panel items. Now you'll see that some items here have a yellow and blue shield icon next to them. This is to let you know that any changes you make here could cause your computer to become unstable or unreliable. This is called user account control, and we'll talk more about this in an upcoming segment. Let's say we want to click on the user accounts and family safety control panel items. Here you can see we have various options for parental controls and managing user accounts. We have a control panel home link here in the top left to take us back to the control panel. And what we can do is we can, if we want to, look at all of the control panel items together. In the top right we have View by Category, and we can select large or small icons to view all the control panel items that are available. But you'll probably want to leave it on the category view. Finally, in the top right we have a search box, and you can start typing in this search box as soon as you open the control panel. Let's say we want to search for printer, and almost immediately all the control panel items associated with printers or printing appear, and it can make it very easy to find the system setting that you want. Now in later sections and later segments we'll talk about specific changes you can make within Windows and with specific control panel items. And in the next segment we'll talk about another way of accessing and controlling devices that you have plugged into your computer. In the last segment we looked at the control panel, which is the main area within Windows from which you would change and modify Windows settings. But there's also a panel to help you manage hardware that you have attached to your computer. From the Start menu, it's called Devices and Printers, so click on the link here. Now in the Devices and Printers panel, any hardware you have attached to your computer will appear. Here we've got a printer, a mouse, a keyboard, the main computer itself, and a monitor, and so on. You can right click on any icon here to bring up properties and things that you can do with that hardware. Here we can change mouse and keyboard settings. If we right click on the printer we can see what's printing, set it as the default printer, we can remove the device. There are many things that we can do. If we right click here on the main computer we have even more options, all associated with the main computer and that hardware itself. As I say, the Devices and Printers panel is a very good way and a very easy way of being able to gain control over the hardware you have attached to your computer. Now you remember in the previous segment I talked about something called user account control, which is associated with control panel and some devices and printer settings. In the next segment we'll talk about user account control, this security system within Windows 7. In the last couple of segments where we looked at the control panel and devices and printers, I mentioned a security system in Windows 7 called user account control, sometimes known as UAC. Now user account control is here to help prevent unwanted changes being made to your computer that could be made by malicious software or a virus, and that could make your copy of Windows unstable or even stop it from starting up in the first place. Items that are protected by UAC, user account control, are indicated by a yellow and blue shield icon, and you can see one on this program here on the desktop. If we run this program, the security layer will appear and everything on the screen will be darkened except for the user account control dialog itself. We can't at this point interact with anything on the desktop, can't open the Start menu or run any programs, we can only interact with this dialog. The rule here is that if you are specifically installing a piece of software or you are specifically making a change, then it'll be okay to click yes on user account control. But if you see this dialog at any other time, then you should be wary, because you may have a virus in the background on your computer that's trying to make changes. You can click show details to bring up more information about the program that's trying to make the change. On this occasion we'll say no, we don't want to allow it. Now remember I said in the control panel that quite a few items are protected by user account control. Here we can see 2 here under user accounts. Let's click on the system and security panel. There are quite a few in here, including device manager here. Now device manager, which is an area in which we can work with the hardware devices that are installed in the computer, user account control will just let us straight into the device manager without giving us the user account control security prompt. But if we want to change the user account control settings themselves, things will be slightly different. Reason being that by default user account control will notify you when programs try to make changes to your computer, but it won't notify you when you want to make changes to Windows settings. This is because it really doesn't want to be annoying. It wants you to be able to make whatever changes you want to Windows settings without it constantly reverting to this security layer. You can turn the settings for user account control up so that you are always notified, but many people find that annoying, or you can turn it down or even off, but I really wouldn't recommend that. My recommendation is to always leave user account control at its default setting. Simply because this means that you are then properly protected against viruses, malware and malicious software. You'll see here on the OK button the UAC yellow and blue shield. If we click this, the user account control security layer will appear, asking us if we want to allow this program to make changes to this computer. So we'll click yes. So that's the user account control security system. In the next segment, we'll look at how you can find information about your computer. In the last few segments, I've talked about the control panel and the devices and printers panels, where you can gain access to Windows settings and gain access to properties and settings for hardware devices that are plugged into your computer. But what if you need more information about the computer itself? You may need this if you're getting telephone technical support, for instance. You access this in the Start menu, and you'll see here a link called Computer. If you right-click on this with your mouse, a context menu will appear, from which you can select Properties. Now a window will appear giving you lots more information about your computer. At the top it'll tell you which version of Windows you have. Here it says Windows 7 Ultimate. It'll tell you what the processor is running your computer, how much memory you've got, and whether you have a 32-bit or a 64-bit operating system. This is information that a tech support person will probably ask for, especially if you're having trouble with hardware. A little bit further down the window you've got the name of your computer and details about whether Windows is activated. As I say, this is all information that a person providing technical support for you, especially over the telephone, may ask for. Now in the next segment we're going to look at Windows Update and why it's important to keep your copy of Windows up to date with patches and security updates. In the last segment, we looked at how you can find information about your computer to give to a technical support person who may be providing help over the telephone or via the internet. But it's also important that you keep your copy of Windows up to date as well with the latest stability and security patches. Windows is unfortunately not a device, and your computer is not a device like a television set or the computer in your car where you activate it and it just works merrily and happily year on year. It needs to be updated in order to keep it stable and keep it running smoothly. Now when you first install Windows 7, the Action Center clicking on the small flag on the right side of the Windows taskbar will give you information about Windows Update. You can also access Windows Update through the Start menu. You can see it here. Now, Windows Update, when you first install Windows, will ask you, do you want to install updates automatically, or do you want to do it manually, or do you not want to do it at all? Now, my recommendation would be to set Windows Update to always install updates automatically, and we'll look at the different settings. Here in the blue panel on the left hand side, we can check for updates and we can change Windows Update settings. Now here, Windows Update is set to never check for updates. Again, I wouldn't recommend this. Windows Update provides essential security against viruses and malware. Obviously you need a separate antivirus package as well, and the Action Center will help you find one of those. So my recommendation is to install updates automatically, but many people like Windows to download updates and let the user choose when to install them. This is because Windows Update can want to restart the computer occasionally after some updates, and if you're using your computer for work, this can be inconvenient. You can also tell Windows Update to give you recommended updates the same way you receive important updates, and I'll have a look at the differences between these in a minute. When you're happy with the settings you've got, click the OK button. Windows Update will now check for updates for your computer. Here we can see Windows Update is telling us there are 43 important updates available and 17 optional ones. Let's have a look at the difference between the two. The important updates will almost always be ticked. You can see the tick boxes here down the left hand side, and I would recommend that you install all of them. Optional updates, they're not essential for the smooth running of Windows, but you may find them useful, so we'll tick these. And you'll see for each one, as you select it, information about that particular update will appear in the blue panel here on the right hand side. These are updates for Windows, and we can see these are updates for the drivers for our hardware, so we will select and install those. When you've selected all the updates that you want to install, press the OK button. Just above the Install Updates button, it will tell you in bold here how many updates and what type of updates it's actually going to install. You can also, down the bottom, get updates for other Microsoft products. These include things like Microsoft Office and the Windows Live Essentials suite. When you're happy, press the Install Updates button. Windows Update may want to restart your computer when it's finished installing updates, but it will alert you to this and give you an option to delay that restart by up to 4 hours. In the next segment, we'll talk about a particular Windows update that affects Windows users in the European Union and visitors to the European Union who will be using Windows Update on their laptop or portable computer. If you're resident in the European Union or are a visitor to the European Union and are using Windows Update on, say, for instance, your laptop, you might see this screen when you restart your computer, telling you that you have an important choice to make, your browser. Now, this is nothing to worry about. It's come about because of legislation in the European Union in agreement with Microsoft about simply giving consumers more choice about which internet browser they use. Now, you'll also notice that Internet Explorer, if you had it pinned to the Windows taskbar, will have disappeared, but that's easy to put back. We'll deal with that in a minute. So, don't worry about this, just click OK when you're ready. What will happen is a window will pop up giving you a choice of internet browsers. Now, by default, the 5 most popular web browsers will always appear in a random order, but you can scroll right to view more browsers, but they're really more for specialist use. You can decide which browser you want to install. You can find out more information about it by clicking the Tell Me More button, or install it by pressing the Install button. Now, my personal recommendations are Internet Explorer. There is a new version of Internet Explorer which may be out when you're watching this, Internet Explorer 9. Mozilla Firefox is extremely good if you like having plugins in your browser, and Google Chrome is very good if you want a very small, light and very fast browser. So you can select which browser you want or press the Select Later button. If you press Select Later, you'll see a browser choice icon on your screen. You'll see it here up in the top right, and you can double click on that to open the browser choice window. Now, you remember I said that Internet Explorer had been unpinned from the taskbar. Well, it's still in the Start menu, so you can repin it to the taskbar quite simply, like that. In the next segment, we'll look at the Action Center, which is where Windows gives you important messages that you need to see. In an earlier segment in this section, I talked about the Action Center, which you access from an icon on the Windows taskbar. Here you can see it's indicated by a small flag, and it's letting us know that it has something to tell us by putting a marker on that flag, in this case a white X on a red circle. It's telling us that there are two important messages, one about Windows updates and one about an antivirus program. More on that in the next segment. But there's a link here to open the Action Center, so let's do that and have a look at it. Now, the Action Center is split into different sections. Here in the blue pane on the left hand side, we can control the settings for the Action Center, more on that in a minute. There's information about user account control. We can view archived messages that the Action Center has previously shown us that we may not have acted on, but we need to act on now. Then in the main section we have information on security and information on maintenance. Now, you'll see that both of these items are colour coded in red, and the Action Center will colour code things depending on how important they are. So finding antivirus software is very important, and Windows Update is very important. If it's moderately important or optional, it'll be in yellow. And if everything is fine, then everything will appear in green. So it'll give you this information, and you can expand these sections to find more information about the message it's trying to give you. Further down, there's options for troubleshooting and fixing problems with your computer. This will launch automated troubleshooters, which can be extremely helpful when trying to sort out problems with your copy of Windows, and recovery options if you're experiencing issues with Windows itself. So let's have a look at the Action Center settings. Here we can tell the Action Center what we want it to give us information about. If we're using a third-party backup software, we can untick messages about backup. We can untick messages about the firewall or Windows Update or virus protection, but to be perfectly honest, I think that the only one that you really ought to untick is Windows Backup, and that's only if you are using a third-party backup solution. So the Action Center is quite straightforward. Everything is in plain English, and as I've said previously, it'll alert you if there's anything that it needs to tell you by putting a little indicator on the flag in the bottom right-hand corner of the Windows taskbar. In the next segment, we'll look at this antivirus message, and we'll look at how you can get yourself protected from viruses and malware on your computer. In a previous segment, I talked about how your computer isn't, sadly, a device like your television or the computer in your car where you can switch it on and it will just work happily for years. It needs to be updated and it needs to be protected, especially from viruses and malicious software. Viruses and malware can cause all sorts of problems, from making your computer unstable to deleting files to stealing information such as credit cards or other details that can be used for identity theft. Now, by default, Windows 7 doesn't come with antivirus software, but it will help you to find and download it. The Action Center will alert you very soon after installing Windows 7 to find an antivirus program online. It'll say, "This is important." If you click on that link, then it will take you to a web page where it will give you lots of recommendations of antivirus software that you can download and install. Now, some of these are free and some of them are paid for. My personal recommendations, in no particular order, are Microsoft Security Essentials, AVG and Norton. But you can choose whichever one you want, and most people will choose an antivirus package from a recommendation from friends or colleagues. So if we want to download one of these, all we need to do is click on its icon. Here we'll download Microsoft Security Essentials, and then we can press the Download Now button. We'll save this, and when it's downloaded, we can run this, and we will then be protected with this antivirus software. Now, just downloading it and installing it isn't always enough. You need to make sure that it's always up to date. So periodically run your antivirus software, which you'll probably find here in the little hidden icons section on the taskbar, and just to make sure that the antivirus software is up to date and that it's scanning and protecting your computer. We're almost done in this section. In the next segment, we'll look at how to log off from your PC and how to shut it down. In this section, we've had an overview of Windows 7, how you use it, and where you can find things. But when you are finished with your computer, you'll either want to log off so that another user can use the computer on their user account, or shut the computer down. So let's have a look at these options. You find them in the Start menu. Here we have a Shut Down button. Pressing this will shut the computer down, turn off the electricity, and you're done. But there are other options. There are Switch User and Log Off options. This is if you want to leave the computer turned on and have somebody else use it on their own user account. Let me explain the difference between the two. Switch User is the fastest way to do this, but if you have files and documents that are open that you haven't saved and you choose Switch User, then if that user shuts the computer down, you could lose any changes you've made to those documents. If you log off, all of your documents and open programs will be closed and you'll be prompted to save things. You can restart the computer, or you can choose to sleep or hibernate it. Both of these are similar to putting your television into standby. Sleep is the fastest of the two options, but will use a little bit of electricity when the computer is asleep. Hibernate is a much deeper sleep, won't use the electricity, but isn't quite as fast as putting your computer into sleep. So when you're ready to select the appropriate option, simply click the appropriate one. In the next section, we're going to look at users and user accounts.